Right, I am going to go ahead and get started. So welcome again, everybody, to this week's Webinar Wednesday. My name is Sevi, and today we're going to be talking about piping in Creo. So before we get started, a little introduction to myself and the company. My name is Sevi. I've worked with PDSVISION for over 5 years. I come from a mechanical engineering background, and I have about 12 years of CAD experience using Creo, AutoCAD, and SolidWorks. PDSVISION is the largest global PTC partner. We have operations all over the world. We are a platinum partner and for PTC products and a growing partner for ANSYS. This slide just shows some of the other pieces of software we support in addition to PTC products. Main one would be ANSYS, which is the industry leader in simulation, which is my background. But also, I like to mention KeyShot because that's a great tool for rendering and the other products you see up here as well. And lastly, I just want to say that I think PDSVISION is unique in the PTC partner realm because of our great technical team. More than 65% of our staff are on the technical side rather than the sales side or operations side. And just speaking for my team, we have a really great diversity in our skill sets, covering whatever PTC product or Creo extension you might want to learn about. So a couple of things I didn't mention before I start. If you have any questions about this webinar, feel free to throw them in the Q&A section of GoToWebinar. So you should have an area where you can type questions. I will try and get to them as I go, but if I don't see them, then I will at least get to them at the end after my demonstration. So ask questions as you think of them. This webinar will also be recorded. You will all receive to your email a link to the recording tomorrow. So if you want to rewatch this, if you want to show it to your colleagues, then you can definitely do that. Okay, so that introduction stuff aside, I'm going to jump into talking about Creo Piping. So Piping Cabling Extension, or PCX, is an add-on for Creo Parametric, and essentially what it lets you do is it lets you route pipes and cables. So you can use these extensions to create realistic representations of cable and pipe routings that will be included in your models. Now, additionally, you also have the ability to pair this with Creo Schematics. Creo Schematics is a 2D CAD schematics tool that links in with Creo Parametric, and it can automate a lot of the process of cabling and piping. So just to clarify on that, you can use piping and cabling just by themselves. That's completely fine. So if you're already a Creo Parametric user, then it's very easy to incorporate some quick cabling and piping. But if you want to take it to the next level, then what you can do is you can also use Creo Schematics. And that lets you create 2D diagrams of your piping and cabling, and then bring that into Creo, automates the process of actually routing those. Either way, whether you use schematics or not, you can then create documentation. So you can create, specifically for piping, you can create drawings, you can create automated tables that convey a lot of your piping information, and then of course send that to your manufacturers. Another thing to mention, PCX is actually included in Creo Design Essentials. So that's just the tier 1 subscription license with PTC, at least for the last couple of years. If you have a subscription license with Creo, if it's at least a tier 1 license from the last couple of years, you probably have access to piping and cabling for free. So everything that I'm about to show most of you can probably do with your current license, again, assuming you have an active subscription. All right. So why do we need this? I'm just going to talk about this quickly. Um, Generally, there are disadvantages with all of the alternatives. So if you just do it in Creo and try and model these things with curves, lines, that sort of thing, that's not really going to give you a picture of how these things actually work in 3D. It's not going to give you an idea of their size, their bend radius, how they interact with the environment. Additionally, if you use a third-party tool, then you don't really have the added benefit of that being parametric. So if you change your assembly in Creo, if you change your schematic, you have the advantage here of all of this working together and updating for you automatically. As long as you have modeled everything in Creo, then use Creo piping or cabling. And even if you have a schematic linked in, all of that is going to be parametric. All that information is going to be shared. So what are the benefits of this? Essentially, it's going to be much quicker and easier. Everything, your designs are going to be smarter. All of that's going to save you time. It's going to increase the quality of your designs. So rather than doing your cable routing at the end of the process in a rather unplanned, unoptimal way, you build this into your core process. You make sure that those routings are defined and modeled in 3D. Lead to reduce time to market, lower development cost, higher product quality, all the good stuff. Okay, so as I mentioned previously, there are two different workflows that you can use with piping and cabling. The first workflow is going to be much easier. Just to be honest, it's the easier way to go if you're first starting out here. And this is going to be where you do not use schematics. So again, this is the workflow where you'd start. If you just have this capability and want to start with some routings, then you wouldn't really use schematics right away. So this workflow you see here is the simpler workflow, doesn't involve schematics. You're going to jump into the piping extension. You're going to set up your pipeline stock. So that's going to be information about how the size of your pipeline and how it handles bends. You're then going to route the pipelines in Creo using the pipeline routing tools available. It's going to be a lot easier than creating multiple curves. The process here makes it rather simple. We can then insert fittings, which are going to be components along our pipeline, and then generate drawings or other deliverables, for example, bed machine instructions to actually manufacture this stuff. And sorry for the watermarks here. It's from our internal stuff, but it's the best place to get these diagrams. So on this slide, you can see the more advanced workflow. So this is where you bring in Creo schematics and you automate a lot of this routing process. This is going to be a little bit more work to set up. So starting on the far left in that dark gray box, basically you're going to have to set up some files, master catalog files, library files, etc., that make all this stuff work. So there is a little bit of a time commitment up front to start using schematics. You have to set up all these files in the background and make sure they're all working properly in Creo. Then if we look at the yellow box on the top, that's going to be creating your schematic. So basically somebody's going to make this schematic in Creo schematics, then they're going to export an XML file, which we load into Creo. Now, once you have those two things taken care of, so the dark gray box on the left and the yellow box on top, the rest of this process is going to be very heavily automated. So pulling from the schematic and from those catalog and library files, Creo is going to know exactly where each pipe goes, so where it starts, at which component, and where it ends. It's going to know all the specifics about the pipeline, so its thickness, diameter, how it handles bends, and it's going to know exactly where our fittings go as well. So a lot of the process will be automated. This is a lot of work up front to get this up and running. But if you're working with complex assemblies with cabling and piping, then this is going to be, it's going to be worth it in the long run. All right. So I'm going to jump into a couple demonstrations. I'm going to be doing two. The first one here, this is going to be a very basic kind of introductory piping example. And this is something that you could do. As I said, if you're a Creo user with a subscription, you most likely have access to this today. So we'll notice I'm in an assembly file. I have to be in an assembly file to use piping. That's just part of how piping works. So we can notice I have some components, and I have a curve created here as well that I'm going to use for my routing. And then I'm going to go to Applications tab and Piping. So the first workflow I'm going to go through here is going to be the manual process. So this is no schematics involved. This is where you would start out if you're looking to use this tool. We'll notice spec driven, this little box in the left corner, is not checked. That means I'm in the correct mode to do this manually without schematics. If you find this box checked, you're going to want to uncheck it for that reason. The first thing I'm going to do is create what's called a line stock. So I'm going to do setup line stock and create. We'll call this pipe 50A. And this is where I'm going to set up the specifics of my pipe. So I'm just going to go through this and change some of these fields. We're going to do a hollow circular pipe, outer diameter 50, thickness 3.9. We can see that there are other options that I'm selecting, so straight pipe or a flexible pipe or a hose. Corner types allowed, so I'm not allowing miter cuts, but I'm allowing bends, and I'm allowing corner fittings. And then I'm just inputting various parameters, allowable bend radiuses, allowable bend angles. We can see miter cuts grayed out because I didn't enable it. So I'm going to save this. So next time I can just read this in. It's going to be saved as a file. I don't have to set this up more than once. And OK. And done. So we're going to notice now in my model tree, I do have this pipe component, line stock component shown there. So now I'm going to create a pipe. This is basically going to let you select a pipeline and create one pipe feature. So I'm going to do create pipe. And we'll notice that we can then select our line stock right here that we just created. So pipe 50A. Now we see the pipe feature is going to show in the model tree. Okay, so how routing works here. I'm going to turn on my coordinate systems. The way you're going to want to set this up, you're going to want to create a coordinate system where your pipelines are going to start and where they're going to end. And you want those coordinate systems z-axis to be facing outward. That's the way these things are going to be set up, that's just the way to do it. So we can see that I have port 1 over here, and I have this exit port over here. Okay. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set a start. So this is where I'm going to start routing my pipe. So I'll set start and click this coordinate system. Okay. So now that we have a start point set, there are going to be several different tools we can use. So extend, 2-pointer port, follow, curve, pipe, axis, etc. And they're all pretty easy to do. So first I'm going to do an extend. And for our first segment, we always have to go along the z-axis. So every time we're gonna, it's gonna start out, that perpendicular direction. I'm gonna do a long axis, and I'm going to do 300. And we can see that this pipeline is being created as I do this. Okay. So now we're going to create a segment over here along the curve that we created. So I'm going to do a follow curve operation. I'm going to select this segment, hold shift, select this next segment. Okay. And now I'm going to do a connect. So this is going to let me bring these two segments, or two disjointed segments together. So I'll do a connect, and I'll select, just hold control and select these endpoints. You can see that it's going to continue straight for some amount of distance, and I can control that distance. So I'll change this one to 200. This is now going to stay straight for 200 and then do a bend. And we can see the two are joined together. As I said, really simple, feels really intuitive, and it's definitely easier than creating this path using curves or sweeps or whatever else you would do. Okay, so I'm going to now set my start point on this far right side. We're going to finish this up. So first we're going to do an extend. We're going to then do a long coordinate system axis. Instead of length, we'll do offset from reference. And we're going to click this exit port coordinate system. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to select y-axis here. And if we set the offset value to 0, basically what this is doing is it's going upward until it lines up with this exit port coordinate system. So what we're telling it to do is basically align with this coordinate system in the y direction. Now I'll click apply. And we'll see that that segment is completed. Now I'm going to do the same thing in the x direction. So now this thing is not just aligned in the y-axis with the coordinate system, it's going to move over to be aligned in the x-axis. And I'll hit OK. Now finally, to finish this off, I'm going to do 2 points or ports. I can just click this exit port, and this is going to go right in. Okay, and we have a completed pipeline. Now I'm going to insert a fitting in here. As I said, a fitting is going to be a component that is inserted along the pipeline. So these components were modeled already in Creo. We're just going to put them, along this trajectory. So insert fitting. This is going to be a straight break fitting. So it's not going to be along a corner or at an end, but it's going to be along a straight segment. We're just going to put it right in the middle here. So we're going to do straight break. And we're going to select our assembly. So actually, just a second, we're going to have to, I didn't realize my files were in a different location. So sorry, just 1 second. Okay, now we're going to create, we can either select a point to place this, but you can see I don't have any points previously created, so I'm going to create a point, and I'll click this segment right here. We're going to do a length ratio, and we're going to do 0.25. So basically we're creating a point 25% of the way along this segment. Okay. So now what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to choose a point on this fitting. So here's our fitting here. We're going to have to choose a point on here to line up with the point that we just created on the trajectory. So what I'm going to do is select this point that was created previously on this fitting. And we'll notice that point that I just selected is lined up with the point that was 25% along this segment. So our fitting is inserted right here. We can see the pipeline is broken going through the fitting because I did a straight line break, and done. Okay, now we're going to do another fitting. This is going to be an end fitting. We're going to put it right on the end here for exit port. So once again, we're going to do insert fitting. This one's going to be an end fitting. We're going to select this part and this variation. And we need to select the pipe endpoint, so we're going to put it right there. This time we're going to have to select a port and an endpoint. So we can see it says select entry port. So I'm going to grab this port 1 coordinate system. And now we'll say select a point to align pipe endpoint to. So I'm going to select, I think it's this one. Yep, this one, which is in line with the back surface here, to say this is the actual endpoint. And done. Okay, very cool. So I'm going to do one more example here, and this one is going to be a little bit more complex because this is going to be the other workflow where we're going to be looking at the whole process from schematics coming into piping. Okay, so I'm actually going to jump into Creo schematics to start out here. This is Creo schematics. It is a 2D parametric CAD tool, if I think you can call it that. That's made for creating schematics. So that can be either piping diagrams or cabling, wiring diagrams. You can also do block diagrams, just if you're curious, parametric block diagrams, that sort of thing too. All right, so this is going to be the entire schematic for our snowmobile. And let me just jump to Creo really quick. We can show the snowmobile. So this is the model we're working with. It is a full Polaris snowmobile, piping, cabling included, everything. So going back to the schematic, most of these here are going to be cabling diagrams. You can see a lot of circuits here, battery to start motor, the ignition, etc., etc. Fuel control, fuel injection, oil control. So we have 3 piping diagrams here. we can see that we have one for the engine, so oil pump to engine to oil tank. We have another for the fuel system, and we have piping for the cooling system. So specifically, I just want to point out in my snowmobile here, there's actually a couple things missing that have not been modeled yet. So specifically in this oil system, this pipe right here is not in the assembly yet. It was modeled in schematics after the other one. So basically we modeled all this stuff first, we brought it into Creo, and now we're doing these final pipes. So this one is not in the CAD assembly yet, and neither is, if I go to this piping for cooling system, neither are these pink pipelines in the bottom of the screen. So this one labeled 18A and these labeled 10A. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over to Creo and we're going to construct these pipelines from, using schematics data, and we'll see how some of it is automated. So a little bit more about schematics. Schematics Lite is the, I believe it's free, and I believe it's included with tier 1 subscriptions. I'm about 90% sure. Should have confirmed that before this, but I'm pretty sure Schematics Lite is free. Lite does have some restrictions. So for example, you can only do 10 of these sheets per diagram. So this one right here, you wouldn't be able to open in Schematics Lite. You have what? We have 14 here. And you can't do a shared central catalog for your company either with Lite. So there are some reasons definitely to upgrade to the higher tier license, and other benefits I didn't mention, like interconnect diagrams. Yeah, this is it's a very cool tool. We can create these catalog objects called blocks. So those will be these connector components. We can create these pipes or cables if you use it for cabling, have a lot of the data included in here at the 2D level that we can bring into Creo. So we would then do an export to XML. I already did that behind the scenes. I exported this document. And now we're going to jump back to Creo Parametric. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to open the piping assembly. So we can see that we have a piping subassembly, cabling subassembly. I'm going to go ahead and open this piping subassembly. And we can see here the fuel tank, engine, various pipes and cables, or not cables, just pipes in this subassembly, but various piping already done, for us. So basically most of the schematic, except for those couple pipes that I pointed out. If we look at the other side here, we can see again, a lot of this piping is already done here. All right. So I'm going to go to Applications, Piping. And I'm just going to change my model tree to Pipeline View. And we'll notice that this spec-driven box is checked here. So this is essentially, it means that we're hooked up to a system of files set in our config.pro. So if I go to my config.pro, again, this is something you do down the line if you want to take piping to the next level. You can see there's all these config.pro options here pointing to various piping setup files that we set up, behind the scenes. Okay. So I'm going to go into designation, and basically what I'm going to do here is I'm going to import that XML file. Okay, so I'm going to click open, and I'm going to bring in this finished piping XML. Okay. Oh, and I think I missed a step. Okay, I think we are good. Okay. So I'm going to do a route pipe. And I'm going to basically add to this existing oil routing. The oil setup was the one that just needed one additional missing pipe. And if we go back to the schematic really quick, we'll notice that these designated components P1 and P6 are going to be what are being connected here, the oil tank and the oil pump. So, okay, we can review our designation, or we can turn on tags to display it, but basically we're going to be connecting these components. We can see that they're already highlighted in red, which means that they're designated as connectors. And these are going to correspond with one of those connectors in the schematic. Okay, so I'm going to do a set start, and I'm going to select this coordinate system right here. There we go. And we can see that all of the specifications, so the size and all the specifics for this pipeline, these are automatically going to be set. Basically, Creo is pulling in this schematic. It knows exactly what pipe goes into and out of this component. It knows the size of the pipe and how it behaves. It also knows where it ends, but it doesn't necessarily know the path that it takes to get there. So as we can see in the schematic, it's just straight lines here. This doesn't get into the actual path that this is going to be routed. So that's the one thing we still have to do in Creo. We're still going to have to actually route this thing, but it already is bringing in all the information about the pipeline from the schematic. Okay. So we're going to do an extend here, and we're going to extend along the axis by 15. I'm going to go to a different view. Actually, not a different view yet. Sorry, jumped the gun. I'm actually going to go to point port and enable point display. And we can see that there are 6 points created. So I'm just going to select these, and we'll see that Creo is automatically going to line or route this through the points as I go. This is a flexible pipe. You'll see that it's a hose, and it behaves as it really would as you're routing it through these points. Okay, now I'm going to go to a different view. We're going to do a new set start. We're going to select this this end port that we're going to be routing to. We're going to extend. Oops. Oop, didn't mean to do that. Remove. Just a second. Not sure what I did there. All right, looks like I actually never completed the 2-point port over here. So I'm going to set start over here. I'm going to do another 2-point port, and we'll route through these points again. I guess I never hit OK. Okay, there we go. So now I'll go to my other view. I'm going to set my start point to this coordinate system. My sum pipeline proceed with the selection. Yes. Okay. We'll extend by 20. And then we'll do 2-point port and connect up to here. Okay. And we can see what that looks like as it's completed. So again, the behavior of this pipe, so how it behaves, how it bends, its size, its thickness, its color, all of that is being brought in from the schematic, as well as the port information, so where this thing is connecting to. So after we're done here, we can check the process, confirm that it matches the schematic automatically here, and Creo will tell us if this does not line up. Okay, now we're going to create a pipe solid. So if I enable thick pipes, we can see that this is currently a pipeline feature, but it's not actually a solid in Creo. So we're going to do pipe solid. We're going to select this segment and OK. And then we're going to make and close. And now we can see if I hide these thick pipes, this still shows as a thick item. And that's because this is now solid material. Okay, now we're going to do the other part of the schematic. So I'm going to create a new pipe, but we are going to grab this one from the XML file as well. This is going to be leg 1, so that's the pipe we're going to be working on. And we can see that it gives me all of my specifications here, pulling in from the schematic once again. So I'm going to hit designate, and we'll see that all of these connectors from our schematic are going to be in here. So you can see as I click through these, IC13 on the schematic is recognized as this component over here. IC14, 15, we can see that all these. Okay. Now they're all shown here in red. Okay. So I'm going to display thick pipes, and I am going to do set start point. I'm going to click C1 here, my coordinate system. Oh, got to turn on coordinate system display. Nope, it's on. Just a second. Oh, I know what I did. Wrong combined rep. Oops. There we go. Now the coordinate system's actually here. It was not shown as displayed. Okay. So now I'll click C1 here. And okay. Now I'm going to do a 2-point port. I'm going to click this point, and that final port. And we can see that the pipeline, this one is not a hose, it's a rigid pipe. It's being routed just between those points and into the port. Okay. All right, now we're going to do another routing. So I'm going to do set start. I'm going to click this coordinate system down here. We can see that the exact size for this segment is now going to be selected just through selecting the correct coordinate system there. All the info is filled in for me. All right, now I'll do an extend. We're going to do length of 95. Okay. I'm going to turn on axis display here. Let me just make sure this is the right view. Oh, there we go. Now the segment we were working on is in the bottom right down here, but what we're going to do is we're going to do a quick follow axis to create another segment in the middle here along an axis. So I'm going to do follow axis, and I'm going to select this axis right here. So we are getting a segment that goes right, through this component. Now for our end conditions, I'm going to do first offset reference to this plane. And on the other end, we're going to do offset from this surface by a value of 75. So we can see the segment that is being created there. Okay. Now I'm going to do set start to down here. Okay. And quickly, I'm going to go into environment and change bend radius to 18. So earlier when we created our own, we put in a couple options for our bend radius. We can see that we can easily switch between them here. So bend radius 18. Okay. And we're going to do 2-point ports and select this endpoint over here. We can see that they are now connected. Very good. Now we'll set start to the other ends. So set start over here. Okay. And we're going to route to this port right down here. Great. Okay, now we have these two segments created, but you'll remember that in the schematic, so going back here to the cooling system, there were actually fittings in both of these, and they were connected. So that info is brought into Creo as well, so we're going to add that in right now. All right, so we are going to first turn off thick pipes. So we're just looking at the lines here. It's just going to make this part easier. We're going to go to a new view. And we're going to display datum points. All right. So we're going to create a breakpoint along both of these segments, representing where the fitting is going to go. So I'm going to do breakpoint. And I'll select this top segment. And we're going to do offset from the segment ends by a distance of 30. We can see that that point's now created. We're going to do the same thing on this other segment, but this one is going to be a value of 32. Okay. So now that these 2 points are created, these breakpoints, we can route the pipeline that connects them. So I'm going to do a set start once again, select this point. We're going to do an extend. Along the y-axis, so straight up at a length of 60. Now we're going to switch the start point over to this other breakpoint. We're going to extend this one along the x-axis. This is going to be length of 45. And then you can probably guess what we're going to do next, but we're going to connect the two. So I'm going to write this one up in the y direction, and then I'm just going to do 2-point port over to here and connects the loop. Okay. Now we're going to insert the fittings. So I'm going to go to my final view. I'm going to click Insert Fitting. And I'm just going to select this segment back here, just close to the breakpoint. And I can see that Creo actually knows which component is going to go in here. So it's going to select the correct component and basically automate this process. I can go ahead and click Apply. We can see that fitting is put in right there. Okay, now I'm going to do the same thing over here. I just select and hit Apply. This thing is automatically placed right along there. Okay, and you can see that here's our completed piping model. Okay, so we got about 10 minutes left. I'm going to turn it over to questions. So take a minute or two, get your questions in. I have some emails up on the screen here. My email, sevi.beaver@pdsvision.com. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. Sales questions, if you are interested in maybe you, as I said, this is included with subscriptions. So if you have an old license and you maybe want to get on subscription to get all the benefits that you would receive from that, reach out to sales. If you're interested in a full schematic seat, so that's the schematics tool, but the upgraded seat that includes extra functionality. Again, reach out. Additionally, find us on YouTube, PDS Vision on YouTube. Lots of great content there, lots of helpful videos. You may even find this webinar on there, but you will get the link, as I said, to this webinar in your emails in the next day or so. So first question is there a current isogen module? So I actually am not 100% sure. The reason for that is I've always skipped over the isogen, creating isogen part of this tool, simply for the reason that I don't have any way to view those or to use those. So basically, I didn't have any use for isogen, so I've never tried to actually generate one of those. I know it works. I don't know exactly how current it is, but I do know that you have the ability to generate isogen drawings. I can't say what the results of that are because, as I said, I don't personally have any way to view isogen drawings, so I can't confirm or deny. I can look into the module, so specifically the isogen stuff. I can see if I can find any information on how current it is, what the exact functionality is, and get back to you. But yeah, all I can say for that, just off the top of my head, is I know that there exists the functionality of generating isogen. I just don't know the specifics on how up to date that is and what that actually looks like. Question: are the points I created creating external references? So question: these breakpoints here that I created, are these creating external references? The answer is I think so. So let's see. I think it's going to create it in the assembly, but I just want to make sure. Yes. So yeah, we can see that these points are created as part of this piping assembly. So we can see we have the pipeline features or the line stock features, the pipe feature itself, these are the specific segments we created, so 2 port or whatever, and then yeah, the points are in here. So in that sense, it doesn't really matter if you created them externally, because you could just select them, or you can create them inside of this tool. And I got a question. How do you do 2 components side by side? So I think that was a reference to that first example I did, which was I put in a fitting that was 2 components side by side. The way that I did that is that component, that entire fitting was just 1 component. It looked like 2, but it was all one. It was all 1 fitting. I basically just combined the 2 models into 1 and then inputted it in there. That's probably the best way to do perfectly side by side, I guess, if you always know those 2 fittings will be like sanitary or 2 flanges. So I'm not exactly sure. I'm not exactly sure what the question is here. I would recommend, I guess, just for me to get a better idea of what specifically you're asking, if you could reach out to me by email, I'm happy to dig more into that. Sorry, I just don't know exactly. I don't exactly understand the question and want to just dig a little bit deeper. Oh, just back to back without a pipe. Yeah, you could just put in 2 fittings. In that case, I think if I'm understanding correctly, you could just put in 1 fitting, then another fitting, and then that would work how you expect. And as I said, if I'm misunderstanding, just send me an email. I'll dig into it. Okay, I think that's all we got. So thank you so much. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions whatsoever. I hope you enjoyed this week's Webinar Wednesday, and we will see you next week. Have a great rest of the week, everybody.